As you know from completing the required readings for this week, exploring the World Bank's website, and through watching the video by Howard White, this session focuses on some of the controversies surrounding impact evaluation. Opinion is divided in the evaluation field as to whether or not impact evaluation is the best way to proceed in some contexts. Through this session, we will examine some of the main issues and give consideration to the weight of arguments in the debate for and against impact evaluation. I have placed a heavy emphasis on the readings for this week. White's article provides a comprehensive case for relying on scientific approaches to impact evaluation in development contexts, whereas Stame's article provides a counterpoint to the use of impact evaluation. When discussing impact evaluation, the focus is usually on randomized controlled trials. In the impact evaluation world, randomized controlled trials are treated as the gold standard to understand the changes that are attributable to the program. I should preface the remainder of these narrated slides with the point that I am not against impact evaluation or its use of randomized controlled trials. But I do find it troubling that randomized controlled trials are commonly treated as the gold standard, especially in regards to impact evaluation. By doing so, I believe that other designs and selected methods are marginalized, even though they can be powerful in generating evaluation knowledge in certain contexts. So all this is to say is that we need to be mindful that there are choices beyond randomized controlled trials that can be advantageous to impact evaluation. In the next couple of slides, I provide a high-level overview of what I think are some of the key points raised in the 2 required readings for this week. I am keen to hear what you think about the author's views on the topic of impact evaluation, and whether what they are stating resonates with your own experiences or views on impact evaluation or program evaluation in general. Please feel free to post your reactions to the required readings on the discussion board for Session 8. So let's begin with the Howard White article. White lays out one perspective on impact evaluation. First, he acknowledges that impact evaluations are not the only approach to evaluation, but rather one of many. However, all things considered, he does note that we need to give some serious thought to impact evaluation, and thus he advocates for the approach. Some of White's contributions include his differentiation between 2 different kinds or definitions of impact evaluation. White himself is interested in the statistical counterfactual type of impact evaluation. That is, he focuses on what would happen in a context if the intervention was not available. His focus is on the presence of the control group. The whole notion of having a counterfactual is very important to him. There are a number of statistical treatments that can help us get there, but the best way is to randomly assign participants into either a control or program group and ensure that other threats to internal validity are minimized. He then goes on to talk about the concept of attribution and how it is often a misunderstood area of impact evaluation, as well as a criticism of randomized controlled trials. He notes that we do not need to get to the level of attribution in impact evaluation. Rather, we can, instead, focus on contribution and thus acknowledge that other variables may also have an influence on the program outcomes that we observe. However, that being said, he does not get into how to assess the contribution of these other variables or elements within a program. Moreover, his focus is still with the intended impact of a particular program on the stated outcomes. In my opinion, a huge issue that is missing in most, and I want to emphasize most, not all impact evaluation, is in regards to the unintended impacts. That is to say, impact evaluations are good at looking at what is aligned with the program objectives. But what happens when we do not have a really good understanding of the unintended impacts of a program? Will impact evaluation truly work in the evaluation of these programs? Another argument that White makes relates to what most evaluators have concluded. That is, that the issues under investigation should influence what evaluation designs and methods are used in specific program evaluations. But some argue that with randomized control trials being touted as the gold standard, they can sometimes override these issues, meaning that randomized control trials are used regardless of the evaluation issues that are the focus of the program evaluation. Stain provides a counter-argument to the dominant use of randomized control trials in impact evaluation. In her article, she talks about the randomized control trial and its use in impact evaluation. She alludes that we can still have rigorous impact evaluations that do not have the statistical counterfactual. Most importantly, she talks about the notion of explaining failures. That is, what can we as evaluators say when we find out that a program does not lead to its intended outcomes? When we encounter an instance of failure to observe the expected impacts or outcomes, she notes that it's a question of developing a sense of what went wrong. There could be a problem with the program theory. Here we're talking about the program's logic model or theory of change. Or maybe it is the way the program theory has been developed and it is inadequate to begin with. Maybe the program theory does not adequately account for the program's complexities or rival explanations. It may be that we inadequately specified the mechanisms by which the stated outcomes are to be achieved, and thus it's a problem with the theory itself. The other possibility for explaining a program's failure to achieve the observed outcomes is that we may have a good program theory, but it is not implemented properly. There might be variation in implementation across sites. We may have untrained individuals who are implementing the program, or the program might have inadequate resources to implement it as intended. So in that case, we cannot conclude that the program is no good. Rather, we can only conclude that the implementation of the program is problematic, and thus we cannot adequately comment on the impact of the program on the given outcomes. In her article, Stain then goes on to talk about methodological explanations for failure to show program impact. The central issue is selection bias, and that has to do with internal validity. Internal validity relates to being able to demonstrate the attribution of observed effects to the actual program and ruling out alternative explanations for the observed outcomes. This is the main focus of individuals who are interested in using randomized control trials for impact evaluation. However, as Stain points out, when you think about the interests of policymakers, especially those in development contexts, their only interest is not to demonstrate that a certain program can lead to certain results or outcomes. Instead, they are also interested in generalizability and the extent to which they can scale up a specific program and use it in the broader context. Stain points out that if evaluators are only focused on cause and effect, they may not be giving enough attention to the concept of generalizability, which may be equally important to program funders within certain contexts. So as we've learned from the required readings for this week, there are many arguments for and against using randomized controlled trials as the gold standard for impact evaluation. In the Session 8 presentation folder, I have uploaded a video segment from Patton's keynote address delivered to a packed audience at the 2013 Evaluation Conclave in Kathmandu. Please note that you'll have to fast forward the video to get to the start of the rant. I have indicated the start times of the rant on the link for the video. The keynote by Patton was delivered via video conference, and some of the video is not great, but the auditory is good. The segment that corresponds to the planned rant by Patton is interesting because Patton knew full well that many of the audience members were sympathetic to impact evaluation as the gold standard. So it's definitely interesting to check it out and hear what he has to say on the issue.